The General Services Administration should be a cabinet-level agency to give it a bigger piece of IT modernization, according to two federal IT veterans. Former Environmental Protection Agency CIO Ann Duncan and former CTO Greg Godbout write for President-elect Biden's transition team that GSA's next administrator would be well positioned to serve as a chief operating officer for the federal government. Jonathan Alboum's principal data strategist at ServiceNow. He's former chief information officer at the Agriculture Department. Jonathan, welcome back. I said before we went on the air, it is great to see Greg and Ann kind of back in the arena, potentially involved in the president-elect's transition team, because they're big thinkers about these things. This is an idea that I haven't seen before. Elevating GSA to a cabinet-level agency, I have. But GSA administrator as kind of COO for the government is a fascinating idea, isn't it?
I agree. I think when you read their paper and you understand what they're going for, whether it's it's moving GSA up, or it's thinking about government a little differently, what's really important is the idea that there is someone in the federal government at a senior enough level to coordinate all of the very good activities that have sprung up over the past 4 years. Whether it's the Technology Transformation Service, 18F, U.S. Digital Service, Technology Modernization Fund, Data Strategy. We have had a number of innovations and changes that have elevated federal IT modernization and digital transformation. I think the biggest challenge we've had over the past 4 years is, as these different initiatives, capabilities have stood up, is that they're not as well coordinated as they need to be. And that's really what they're talking about here, driving that coordination, which is really key if we want to digitally transform government.
How do you reconcile the potential silos between a federal CIO role and what this person would do at the General Services Administration?
Yeah, that's an interesting question, because it's easy to think that the federal CIO would be doing all of these things today. But when you think about how we're structured in government, we have these silos and sort of built in naturally, the way the budget is created, and how we're organized presently. So I think we have to do something new. We have to elevate someone or create some new position that's able to oversee it all, that is charged with overseeing it all. The federal CIO has a very, I think, distinct charge around activities at CFO Act agencies and the Office of Management and Budget around creating budgets and making sure policy is properly integrated. But there's a disconnection at times between other aspects of IT modernization and digital transformation. So we have to be very clear and I think be very intentional about what this role is and what we're trying to get out of these various activities.
There's a lot here that they're writing about in 8 short pages. That's the first step of 4 they propose, elevating GSA to cabinet level. The second step they write about is inspiring the innovation workforce with Presidential Leadership Fellowship, and we can talk more about that another time, because I want to get to the third step, which is another pretty innovative idea. Guide government leaders with the Agency Transformation Playbook. This sounds like the template that agencies have been asking for. You and I discussed this, I think, off the air when you were the CIO at Agriculture. Why isn't there a framework for what agencies should do to move forward on these transformations? This sounds like what they're going for right here. Am I reading it right, Jonathan?
I think so. What they're recognizing, very importantly, is that government has a lot of similarities, irrespective of the department, irrespective of the program, and sometimes even irrespective of the level of government. And to the extent that there are successful approaches that we've used at different agencies, and we can make them somewhat generic, we can apply them, I think, very successfully in other agencies. And some of these very same techniques have been applied at state governments. They've been applied in local governments. They've been applied at the private sector. So it's understanding them and thinking about how they apply to the big, challenging topics that we have in front of us as a government. The new administration is going to come in with some huge challenges around pandemic, whether it is an additional relief bill, or it's simply getting people back into offices safely, or the vaccine distribution. There's a lot of complexity in these different endeavors, and to the extent that we're able to use an approach that's been successful before, to manage logistics, which is what the vaccine distribution is, or to manage the workflows that are required to bring people back into an office safely. If there's an approach that's been proven and we can apply it to these hard problems, I think we take a dramatic step forward, and we're going to be more successful as we approach these things, because we're not going to be starting from scratch. And I think, if anything, it's the idea, what I really like about their ideas is that we're not starting from scratch. We're building on what's been accomplished over the prior 4 years, which, you know, was built. These accomplishments were built on the prior 8 years. So we have a good history in the federal government, I believe, of not starting at the beginning when we get a new administration. There's a recognition that the good work can be built upon, and we can use it to drive digital transformation across government.
We have about a minute left, Jonathan, and that is exactly the point of the fourth of 4 steps they're proposing, a transformation advisory board, they say, to ensure continuity in the transition of those ideas. What would that look like in your view?
Well, I think you have to be able to have a group that's going to continue irrespective of the administration. So, a group of very senior and experienced policy officials, but also people that have been through the implementation of government programs successfully in the past, who can think about the future and can lay out plans that take 5 years, 10 years to implement, and do things along the way every year to prove that we're going to be successful over time. I think that if you're able to establish that board and you can make it as nonpartisan as possible, with a recognition that these are long-term endeavors. The digital transformation of the federal government is something that we have to be focused on now and well into the future. With that kind of charge, you can create an environment where people are constantly pushing forward, as opposed to move forward a little bit. Now let's wait and see what the next administration does, move forward a little bit. And that start and stop can be very disruptive. And that's what we really need to move away from as we push forward into this next administration, in my opinion.
Jonathan Alboum, thanks very much as always. Great to see you.
Thanks so much.